Imagine how messed up our kids would be if we were perfect too.
My gosh, like they would never measure up.
Research shows us they responded to their kids, with presence and empathy, not 100% of the time, but it was more like 30 to 50% of the time.
It's pretty shockingly low. One of the best things I think we can give our kids is our calm nervous system so they can be calm. What is good enough for a mom? Hunter, a lot of the moms that I talk to are loaded down with mom guilt because they feel like they're never doing enough to make their kids healthy, securely attached. They beat themselves up over every small mistake they might make, right? They're constantly worrying if they're enough as a mom. I worry a lot, number one, because I think that the mothers that care that much about their children, that means they love their children. It's a good instinct. But I also know that that can lead to a lot of anxiety in the child if she's that agitated and that stressed out herself. One of the best things I think we can give our kids is our calm nervous system so they can be calm. I know you agree with that in particular. What does it do to a child if their mother is agitated and nervous all the time like that?
Well, I know because I was pretty agitated and nervous when my first daughter was really young. I think because just anxiety about the whole thing. I feel, it's funny as you describe that, I feel a little angry and frustrated that mothers are kind of saddled with that, because I feel like that's kind of from the structures of our society that, women are sort of saddled with this idea that, we're valued most, historically when we're selfless and we give everything we have. And that leads moms to this kind of state of guilt and burnout, which is really, as you said, detrimental to kids. When we, I see a lot of moms that are also very worried and really wanting to get it right. We have a stack of parenting books, like really high. And I think some of the most important things when I think back to the advice I would have given myself, or if I would have listened to it, if I could have given myself when I was a younger parent, like it would have been to slow down and to do what I could to ease up on myself, to have more compassion for myself, because that will, fill our kids in a different way. So we're very porous as humans. We we feel each other's feelings. If you're agitated and stressed, I'm going to feel that. Even like through Zoom, I could probably feel it. Like if you were having a really rough day today, Adam, who knows? But we, especially in person, we're very much feel each other's feelings, and we co-regulate our emotions and our nervous systems with each other, parents and children, very much so. So yeah, in a way, it gives a lot of strange, parents have a lot of power to influence the state of the day, the state of how things are going, the state of their kids' nervous system. And then that can create a feedback loop of like, oh, am I messing it up? And I must try harder. And really what we want to do is give ourselves some compassion, ease off a little bit more, and except it's incredibly hard to do when we feel like we're not doing enough. To then go a little easier on ourselves feels really counterintuitive in our culture, which is like, work harder, go stronger, get more done so that you are worthwhile. And so it's hard for parents to slow down and to invite some ease into their lives, even if they hear these words, even if they listen to the Mindful Mama podcast, they're like, yes, I understand. Like my kid's feeling these things, and we can know that intellectually, that we get those habit energies of trying to be the good student, trying to be enough, trying to do all we can to be enough. Really, they don't get tamed and settled quite so easily. It takes a lot of sort of daily practice and daily reminder and support from the community and from others to know that, yeah, it's actually okay for us, and that's actually good for us to have some ease, to give our kids to some other people, to go for a walk by ourselves, to read a novel, um, to ease up on the pressure that is relentlessly coming from ourselves often.
One thing I'd love to ask you is what is good enough? Because I think most moms don't know what the target is they're even trying to hit. The target is absolute total perfection at all times with the perfect children who grow into the perfect human beings on the planet. And they say, Mom, you never did anything wrong at all. And that almost is like every mom's target. What is good enough?
Imagine how messed up our kids would be if we were perfect too.
My gosh, like they would never measure up. That would be terrible for them. Even that would be awful. And we know, for example, plants need wind and resistance and gravity for them to grow. Otherwise, they crumble and die. So our children need friction. They need to learn and grow. The target's not for them to be 5 years old forever, but to be like the book on your shelf says, to be good humans, right? And they learn that through friction and trial and difficulty. What is good enough for a
I
mom?
think that's such an important question to ask because good enough is the very best we can do. And we can't do perfection. And as we joked about, it wouldn't be good for our kids to have perfection because they would be imperfect humans as well. And actually, it's really helpful that the research kind of tells us what good enough is. So, I teach parents how to be less reactive and then use your whole brain, and then how to communicate more skillfully with their kids, how to listen better and more, with more presence and less, mind chatter, and to respond more skillfully. And so I tell parents that, if we can do, I'm not asking you to do these skillful means, these skillful ways of responding 100% of the time. You're going to mess up. You're going to yell, right? Like I talk about how to stop yelling. You're going to yell. That's okay. And that's fine. But we want to try to do these skillful means maybe more often than not, right? That would be good for us. That would be good for our kids if we didn't yell more often than we yelled, if we could respond without shame and blame more often than, sometimes the words of our parents come out of our mouth, right? If we could do that more often than not. And the research shows us that the good enough parents, and you probably know this, right? The attachment research shows us that the parents, they responded to their kids, with presence and empathy, not 100% of the time, not even 80% of the time, but I think it was around, and I'm not totally exact on the numbers, but it was more like 30 to 50% of the time.
It's pretty shockingly low.
Yes, shockingly low. So it's like, it's not that, when I ask parents like, hey, when, your kid comes over to talk to you, that is a bid to be seen and heard, right? And if we can listen to our kids talk, or, our little kids talk about Minecraft or something that's like so boring to us that makes us want to cry. But if we can listen to that and put our phones down and give them attention and make them sort of the object of our mindfulness in that moment and give them that attention, then, when they become used to us listening and they become used to sharing with us. And that's really creates like a solid connection, but it's not like all the time. It's not 80% of the time, but sometimes, right? Maybe 30 to 50% of the time. That's what you're aiming for. If you can put everything down, close the laptop lid, maybe turn off the burner and, really crouch down and listen, that's going to be amazing to sort of put those deposits in the relationship bank account so that you have that close connected relationship that facilitates cooperation and all the good things that parenting gives.
Teaching somebody that they are going to be responded to and that they can collaborate with others as they grow, that is secure attachment. So that is it. The good enough really is, can you pass on mostly secure attachment to your child so they know what to expect, they have a reasonably regulated nervous system, and they're able to work together with other healthy human beings in the world to give and receive love. Is that a good target?
Yeah. It's interesting. I was talking about attachment for the podcast with an attachment specialist and thinking, of course, like everyone, I I looked at those markers for an insecure attachment and avoidant attachment. I thought, oh no, like, this happened and maybe, I don't know, I have these things, we worry about ourselves,
Yes.
right? And I realized, like, as much as like the relationship with my father, for instance, gave me a lot of fodder, gave me some stuff to work with, to write about in Raising Good Humans, that gave me things to think about and to process in parenting. There were also all these wonderful things like, this affectionate, hugs and back rubs at bedtime, and all these like wonderful things that made me feel, oh, I guess it was good enough. Like I was secure enough. And I really love the idea of thinking about that as a continuum. Like we always think about these things as we're either doing it right or we're doing it wrong. But really what our kids need from us is they don't need perfection. They don't need complete dysfunction. They don't need either of those, but we really want to be kind of in the messy middle of being a human and modeling for our kids, because the best parenting, of course, is in modeling for our kids. What does it mean to be a real human? Not just the role of parent, like I'm this perfect parent on high, not just the role, but like you as a real human being, and you messing up and recovering. Like they need to see that whole process, right? So yes, we want to be imperfect, and I hope that gives people permission. I mean, I like to say to people, permission to be human, because I think that, we need permission to kind of just be ourselves a little bit more. We're so afraid of messing up our kids, and rightly so. But, we, of course, we don't want to do that, but we are going to probably in some ways. And maybe we can just do the best that we can and aim for skillful more often than not.
I love this. And one thing that I tell my clients when they're saturated with parenting guilt, whether it's moms or dads, is one of your most important jobs as a parent is to help them develop that prefrontal cortex in the brain, which is going to grow until they're about 25. What we see a lot is if a parent is not engaged at all, that prefrontal cortex doesn't form properly. We know that if you make your child desperate for your attention and respond to them very little, that it underdevelops into anxious attachment, and the self-regulation areas don't develop properly. We know that if your child is very, very scared and hurt and turns inward and becomes avoidant, it overdevelops in the prefrontal cortex to squash their emotions and stop them from feeling pain, but even joy and happiness. The prefrontal cortex is not the only system, as you know, that is built during the course of childhood, but it's one of the most important ones we build. And in particular, context helps build it. When you give your child context for when something bad happens, and it will, right? When grandpa passes away and you teach them about death and you put it in proper context. You don't say, well, sometimes people go to sleep and don't wake up and now they're terrified for the rest of their life and never want to sleep again. But you explain maybe the concept of death in a way that's less terrifying to them so that they have context and understanding, right? Shaping it with context. Do you agree there? And if so, what is a way that a parent can start understanding even how to give context if it was never given to them?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, the reason why the prefrontal cortex takes so long is because it needs experiences. It needs to, over time, develop through experiences with all kinds of people in the world. And some of those are us and some of those are others. And that prefrontal cortex, I kind of think of it in a lot of ways as like, it is, when one practices mindfulness, the prefrontal cortex, they've shown through magnetic resonance studies that it becomes thicker with gray matter, and that the amygdala, which is kind of the center of the fight, flight, or freeze, gets less dense in gray matter. So and knowing that and understanding how it has affected me and others throughout my life, I can see that it is like a very much a regulatory area, right? It regulates like how we process our feelings, how we remember to be on time to various things, all those different things, right? And it regulates, how we see the world, like all that verbal ability, impulse control, problem solving. And so that context of, I think, wider understanding, can only help, right? Like when we can say, when say our kid comes home and they've had a challenge with their friends, and we can offer them empathy and reflect back with reflective listening, kind of start to help them to process and understand those things and be sort of that empathetic sounding board, but then maybe offer them that context where I wonder if something is going on with this other kid. I wonder what, is feeling like for them, right? For us to offer this kind of bigger picture of their, the different things in the world that are affecting them. That's the start of wisdom, which is, of course, what we'd all want for our kids.
Wisdom is a very well-developed prefrontal cortex with a lot of context that is accurate and true, I would say. And that as a parent, when we aim for good enough, I think it's helping them develop that, helping them index, helping them make sense of it. And one thing.
Yeah. When we, to go back to good enough and the idea of like when we mess up, right? Say we lose it. We yell at our kids, we raise our voice, and then we come back after and we offer the context of, hey, A, I'm sorry. And then B, like, when you kept asking me about that thing when I was really hungry, and so tired, I had very little resources to be able to feel calm and to respond to you calmly. And that's one of the reasons why I yell, like when people are, to offer the context of understanding when people are, just like you, when, for me, when I'm hungry and when I'm tired, it's harder to regulate my feelings and to just sort of offer those moments of, hey, I'm human too. And then kids can see themselves in us, and they can also start to see other people as kind of like a whole, and their parents as whole beings, which I think is the start of compassion in themselves as well.
I think it helps them externalize the cause of any of their disruptions or anyone else's disruptions. So they don't say, oh, you responded that way because I was bad for asking a question. They can learn to say, oh, when other people respond badly, I should first see if they're, right, the HALT method. Are they hungry? Are they angry?
Yeah.
Are they lonely? Are they tired? Or the second T, are they traumatized and I just poked the wrong button, right? To externalize from sense of self-worth and self-value and say, what's going on with you today that you just responded that way? I think if we can train them that way, that's how we, number one, overcome that fear and that risk of anxious attachment style, which we are so afraid we're going to give our kids, that they don't deserve love. They're not good enough and everything's my fault. I think if we can teach them to externalize like that with context, that's how we avoid that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love that.
I love that too. Nervous systems. I know that you work a lot with nervous systems and helping people understand what your nervous system can be doing. And when you yell, for the people at home who might be beating themselves up because maybe they got a little louder than they probably should have this week at their kids, and they're thinking right now of that moment. Everybody out there, I know that that's happening. What is something you do to relieve parents of that guilt? Because there's so much shame there. And right, we shouldn't feel good that we yell at our kids, but how do we begin relieving that fear and that shame? What do you do?
Well, I think it's important to understand what we talked about earlier. Like, it's no way is it good for your kid to have an absolutely perfect parent on a pedestal. So that's important to understand. And I think it's also important for us to understand a little bit about our nervous systems and about what's happening when we yell. When my temper started coming out when my oldest daughter was 18 months old, 2 years old, and her big feelings felt completely unacceptable to me. And it was like it was a volcano that I couldn't stuff down inside at the time. And it's really important to understand that while yelling, that behavior, right, it is our responsibility, but it's not our fault. It's not like if we yelled, especially anyone listening to this podcast, listening to you, Adam, nobody woke up in the morning and said, I think I'm gonna yell at Jake at 4:15, right? I think I'm gonna scream at them today. Like, that's gonna be a good idea. No one is actively, consciously choosing to scream at their kids and to yell at their kids. It's important to understand that it's a nervous system fight, flight, or freeze response in us, right? Our nervous system is seeing our kid as a threat in that moment, and we are having that fight, flight, or freeze nervous system response. And we can work with that. We can take responsibility for it. We can apologize for it. It's another way of taking responsibility for it. But it's important for us not to shame and blame and berate ourselves for it, but to understand that this is our nervous system. And plus, when we shame and blame and berate ourselves, like when I did that, I was a puddle on the floor in the bedroom for a while, and I was incapacitated, right? Then when we are harsh to ourselves, that it just leaves us incapacitated. It doesn't leave us as very good parents in any way, shape, or form, right? And that's not exactly what we want to model for our kids anyway. So it's really, really important for us to give ourselves a soft landing, practice some self-compassion. Practice, and for those who are watching the video, I'm putting a hand to my heart. Oh, that was a bad moment. That was tough. Practice talking to ourselves as we might talk to a dear friend. Oh, that was a tough moment, but oh man, we'll try better next time, and etc. Be kind to ourselves, because when we're kind to ourselves, then, it's like, when we give ourselves that soft landing, it's like we can pick ourselves up, we can step forward. We don't put ourselves into this panic of fight, flight, or freeze, of incapacitation. We're able to get back up, to start again, to begin anew, and to we're better able to regulate ourselves if we can be kinder to ourselves. So it's important to understand with our nervous system that our yelling, it is this nervous system reaction. It is absolutely not a thing we're going to willpower our way out of, but it is a thing that we can practice our way out of. So if we have a lot of stress in our lives, that's really important to say, okay, if I have a lot of stress in my life, my stress is up to here. It's not going to take much to not get into yelling, into fight, flight, or freeze, overwhelm. If I'm a working parent in those 4 hours I have with my kid all day, right? If I'm super stressed, right? So we have to think about taking care of our overall stress. We have to think about understanding I'm having a nervous system response when we start to go down that road, and use resources and use practices, and also practice kind of building in some capacity and some ease, to go back to that idea of ease every day, to build in some capacity and ease every day, because we know kids are amazing at pushing our buttons. They find these new ones. They're so good at it. So we need to know ahead of time that that's going to happen, and build in as many resources as we can to have some capacity and some space for that.
I agree with that. So for context, I've got 5 kids myself, and
my goodness.
And baby number 6 is on the way right now. So we have, thank you. We have a very loud home, and I got a lot of flack not that long ago because I released a short video on Instagram saying, the healthiest, happiest kids usually are extremely loud because they have the freedom to be loud. They're not being screamed at. They're not being yelled at. But at the same time, the healthiest kids can be the most challenging for a parent whose nervous system is not regulated, like you just said. If your nervous system is up here, topped out, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10 stress every day, and your child is just trying to be a kid and running and playing, or kicking open the bathroom door while you're in there to talk to you about Godzilla or orangutans or whatever it is for the day, and you don't have capacity, you will very quickly teach them that their natural curiosity, their natural energy, their natural self is unacceptable. And that's the message that most parents accidentally send that actually damages their kids, is you are unacceptable as you are. And most parents don't mean to send that message. That's a nervous system response of, I can't handle you right now, coupled with, I'm not going to make myself healthier and more resilient, so I will not be able to handle you for the first 10 years of your life. coupled with I will give you no context about why I'm this nervous and why I'm stressed out. No context, constant, consistent negative responses, and not doing your own nervous system regeneration. I think all of those are probably the biggest problems I see. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, we look at our kids' behaviors that cause problems for us, and we're often, we want to sort of fix that kid's behavior. We want to fix them so that we feel okay. Like, you be quiet so I feel better, right? And that's not necessarily how it works. Like, obviously there are behaviors that we want to have stop that aren't healthy or not meeting needs and things like that, and we should have boundaries around those behaviors. But um yeah, loud kids, kids who are going about being kids, being messy and loud and obnoxious and all the different things that kids' behavior can be for us. Yeah, we have to recognize that this is a super, super intense period in our life. And it's hard for me to say this because I also understand that we're in the context of, at least here in the United States, parents are so under-resourced. We don't have family around us. A lot of middle-class parents are really far away from their family of origin. We're kind of alone in these little, nuclear family households. Communities are less strong because people are isolating themselves more. And there's not a lot of resources for parents, and childcare is incredibly hard. So understanding that this is a big ask, but this time, yeah, like when your kid is 10 and under, now that my daughters are 15 and 18, I kind of feel like those old grandmas you saw when you just had a baby and they were like, oh, enjoy every minute. And I just wanted to throttle them because I was like, do you know how stressed out I am? But I feel that way in the sense that I can see how quickly that time goes by, those years, that intensity of those years goes by. And while you're in it, it feels like it's forever. And for you, it's going to be a little longer than me for this five of them. But it feels like it's going to be like this forever. And we just have to get used to it. And we can't, but it really isn't forever. It's an intense period of your life, right? It is probably less than the majority of your life, for sure. It's maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, right? That you have this really intensive time where your kids are, when kids are little, right? They need you very intensely and they need those hours. And it's really important to resource that time and resource yourself for that time as much as you possibly can, because you're right. We give them these messages unintentionally that they're unacceptable. And that's not what we want to say, right? We want to say, when you come in the room, hearts shoot out of my eyes, and I can sit here and have the capacity to listen to you and to be curious about you and give you that attention. There's this beautiful quote that really drives me in the work that I do. And it's by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. And he said that, when you love someone, the best thing you can offer them is your presence. How can you love if you are not there? And I think that's so meaningful and powerful. The idea that we want to really be there, right? To offer our presence is to say, I accept you as you are, but that requires this capacity. It requires a capacity for us to be able to sit with our own discomforts and anxieties, and to notice things like the judgments in our heads, and to let them go and refocus on our kids with some curiosity and some kindness, and to also, offer ourselves and our families the space and the time it requires to be able to cultivate that kind of presence, to be able to, in the midst of, let me tell you about Godzilla and Minecraft and I don't want to go to bed and blah, 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 and the loudness and the pace of childhood. So I think we're, one of the things I wish I could give to parents. If I were like a fairy with a magic wand, is that I would just give parents more space and time and support in order to slow down and breathe and not fill it up with scrolling on their phone.
Right, because that's just dopamine. All that is. That's a sign of a nervous system that's burned out, scared, depleted. That's a parent who's not getting their co-regulation with other adults either. One thing that we haven't talked about yet is co-parenting and the role of if the parents are together, the role of co-parents being able to take care of each other and help. I've been married for 17 years. I can't imagine single parenting because my wife and I, we have to tag team. We have to go back and forth, or our nervous systems would be scorched. When one of us is kind of haggard and staggering, the other one looks and says, "You're not doing very great." And they go, "Yep, that's true. Okay, you go over there for about half an hour. You do your thing. I've got this. Come back and tag me out because I'm gonna be burned out in an hour from now." Okay, that's an important aspect. Can you talk a little bit out for those who are fortunate enough to have a co-parent, maybe working peacefully with them? What is the role of co-parenting in nervous system regulation?
Well, I think that they are, they're there in the house. They're feeling your feelings just as your kids are feeling your feelings, and they're feeling the things from their kids. Your co-parent is, you're both bringing some things to the table, and it's important to kind of understand what you're both sort of bringing to the table. I think at its best, your co-parent is doing exactly what you're saying, Adam. It's like seeing, oh, you're scorched. Let me tag in. Sometimes, parents, sometimes I talk to moms who feel so much of that like mom guilt and that self-sacrificing energy that they're not inviting their co-parent in, and they're burning themselves out without saying, "Hey, I need help. I need you to go wake up at night and take care of these kids and not me." And yeah, I don't know. I'm very lucky to have a very wonderful, active husband who is kind of naturally calm, whereas I need all these mindfulness tools and all these things to help me regulate my system. But he's pretty naturally calm, and and that ability for me to say, well, when he has had moments of being dysregulated, to give him the eye and to kind of like tag myself in, or for him to come in and help. Those are so essential. I mean, it's yeah, I feel for single parents. I wish them enough enough resources to be able to share the load in whatever ways they can, if it's not a co-parent.
For sure. What does so for context, a lot of the women who are listening to this right now at home, and some of the men, they're not used to having a co-parent who backs them up. They don't even really know how to ask for that. And they might have a co-parent who'd be willing to, but their co-parent might not know either. A lot of my audience has insecure attachment, so they don't even know how to take care of each other's needs. What does your husband do for you that helps you stay calm and regulated and be a better mom for your kids? What does he do? What are some practical things?
Well, he cooks dinner every other night. I cook. We sort of swap off. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Sometimes it's frozen fish, but he cooks dinner every night and every other night, and he does his own laundry. And so, I don't have some of the overwhelming burden. But he also does things like, one of the most important things he does is, we had a conversation when the kids were little where I was like, "Wow, I am taking phone calls from the doctor's office and the school, and we got to just spread out this load of administration because that is a huge burden." And a lot of people are sort of trained to sort of overlook that or not really see that as the amount of work that it is, and it actually takes up many hours of a week. So I think it's really important to, that's a great place to start with your co-parent. If you're like, "Oh, I'm not sure, if I want them, I don't know, whatever," you have them call the doctor's offices and make the doctor's appointments, right? Like, and be the contact person for those places. That is a great way to share the load. But I also think like one of the nicest things is, there's never a question of, if I want to do something, if I'm doing something, if I'm going to a yoga class or a dance class, to do these things and he's also going to do his things. And we're going to support each other in doing those different things. And it's not a question of, am I asking permission or anything like that? It's like a question of, hey, I'm a human and I have a need to be a human that is not a parent sometimes, especially if you have little kids, right? Like you really need to have some times when you are just like not a parent and build those in regularly to your week. And just to approach that with, hey, this is what I need. And, in order to do that, we need you to be in charge on Thursday nights, and take care of things on Thursday nights and have that conversation and to if there's pushback to kind of get curious about that and have a conversation that's that's maybe from a foundation of curiosity rather than judgment, right? To say, okay, let's talk about these things. Let's talk it through.
So providing a lot of support in those areas, balancing the actual load. Sounds like you and your husband are able to have those conversations directly. And that's what's missing for a lot of the clients I work with is just being able to say, hey, this is a lot. Can we talk about balancing it? Right. And it sounds like he receives that quite warmly.
Yes, he does. And I have a tool for those clients who are scared about having those conversations. This is a beautiful tool from the Plum Village tradition. And they do this practice called beginning anew, but they have this way of speaking with each other where there's a little bit of a formality to it. And it has 3 parts. And it's called beginning anew. And the first part is called watering the other person's flowers. And what you're doing is you're just sharing your appreciation. So if you want to have what you anticipate might be a difficult conversation, maybe with your partner, you can first find something you appreciate about them. I really appreciated when you said X, Y, or Z or did X, Y, or Z last week or whatever, right? So you are showing them that you see the whole them, right? You're not just picking on them. You see the whole them. Part 2, you share your regrets. Share your regrets for anything you said or did or thought or whatever. Like, hey, I'm sorry if blah, 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 blah. And you'll have those because you're a human being in a relationship and you'll probably have some regrets. And then part 3 is when you share your hurts or your difficulties in a way that's not accusatory. So then it's such a beautiful way. So then you say, I need X, Y, Z, probably speak in your I statements rather than you statements, etc. But it's such a beautiful way of speaking to people about all kinds of difficult things because it really opens people up because you're seeing their good, you're appreciating their good, you're saying, hey, I'm not perfect either. I got some regrets. And then you can talk about the difficulties, and it really makes for a really lovely. It can make for a really wonderful conversation. In fact, I wrote a letter of beginning anew using that format to my father about difficulties we had. We had difficulties all through my teen years and 20s, and I remember I wrote it in an airplane. Anyway, I sent it to him, and it really was incredibly beneficial. He received it really warmly, amazing. I was incredibly surprised, and it really helped our relationship for many years after that. But I recommend this as a very skillful tool.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love when people can get a little bit personal about their life like that. That's one wonderful piece here. A lot of people, they grow up in such a way that they don't have a frame of reference for what a healthy mother should even look like or a father. They don't even understand that. So when they go forward, they say, I'm going to be the best parent. And sometimes the only thing they have is not my parent, not them, right? Not that. What are 3 good frameworks maybe, or 3 good targets that you teach to parents? We've talked about what's good enough. What are 3 key areas that they could focus on if they have no idea what a good parent does? What are 3 good things that a parent can do?
I think the first thing for me that comes to mind is listening, is some skillful listening. And when we think about like mindful listening, it means that we are, that our children, in the context of our children, our child is the object of our attention. When we get distracted, we turn our attention back to our child. We will get distracted, but we just turn our attention back to our child. We practice breathing, we practice calming our body and just listening. And one of the keys to mindful listening is to practice the attitude of non-judgment or curiosity. And so our brains very naturally are discerning and judgments arise. It's very, very normal and natural. But we can practice to notice that, oh, okay, I'm judging, right? It's my brain's trying to take a shortcut. It's fine. It's like, that's just what brains want to do, right? Is they want to take a shortcut. So instead, can I be curious? Can I listen to my child with the idea that with a beginner's mind, like, who are they today? Like, our child truly is like a river that you never step in the same river twice, and they are growing and changing so much all the time. And if we don't pigeonhole them with our judgments and our labels and shortcuts, mental shortcuts, he's the smart one, she's the athletic one, blah blah blah, and we practice curiosity instead, we can really kind of be open to, who are you today? Who are you today? And let me learn about who you are and listen to the contents of what you're saying and listen to the emotion behind what you're saying and listen to what you're not saying, right? Like, to really listen with curiosity. This is like one of the best gifts we can give our kids, is to just really, really listen without judgment and with trying to understand. And it can help us bypass a lot of conflicts as well. So I would offer them the tool of listening. And then along with the tool of listening, I would invite them to practice some restraint in not jumping in to fix the problem. So one of the things we want to do is we want our kids to always be happy and healthy, and it comes from a beautiful place. But a lot of parents will jump in and tell kids how to solve all their problems, right? Like, the kids come to them with a problem and the parent will say, okay, well, here, let me just tell you how to fix it, what to do, or how to solve this problem with your teacher, or with your friend, or whatever it is. And this, when you can practice some restraint and not telling your kid how to solve their problem, not offering advice, it's really a great gift to your kid, because when you go in to solve all the problems, you are giving them a vote of no confidence. You are teaching them that they may not have the capacity to solve all their problems, that they must go to a parent or an authority figure to solve all their problems. And when you can practice some restraint and say, oh, wow, that must have been frustrating, and just reflect back, then they can start to kind of unpeel the onion, right? Like, they can say, they can talk some more, and they'll tell you more about their problem, and lo and behold, what tends to happen if we just practice listening, we bite our tongue and we want to jump in and solve the problem, and we just keep saying, oh, okay, like, yeah, I bet that must have been confusing when she said that. Oh, huh. Wow. Whatever it is, like, we're just responding and letting them speak, and we're listening. Our kids can solve a lot of their problems by themselves. We don't need to jump in and solve other problems. And that is a really important skill for us, to step back and to let them take that agency on with a lot of their things. And maybe if we have some advice a little while down in the conversation, we could say, I have some thoughts on this. Do you want to hear them? we could ask.
Checking in before giving unsolicited advice. How does that help?
Yeah. Well, then it's nice, because I do that sometimes with my oldest daughter. She has a chronic pain condition, and she's been calling, and I've been listening. It's been challenging, sort of some of the first year of college, and every once in a while, very, very sparingly, I will say, I have some thoughts on this. Do you want to hear them? And so
How
it
often how often does she
allows
say yes? I'm curious because she's 18, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I do it very, very sparingly. So
Okay.
she does usually, and
Okay.
sometimes she says no, but she does usually say yes.
That's good. I hear you.
And but that puts her in a receptive place to
Good.
say, okay, I am ready to, I'm gonna hear something. I'm not just venting. I'm ready to hear something.
Well,
And I
and
don't know if she follows it or not, um, but I think it certainly does help. I mean, we can imagine it like when we're talking to a friend and they may have something to say. Like we can imagine it from that point of view. If we're having a difficulty, and
yep. Well, it signals when you do that, when you ask permission before throwing it, it signals to her that you see her as a human being, right?
Mhm.
You see
With
her
empathy.
as a dynamic human being who has rights and boundaries, and you are gently asking, "Hey, look, I have something to offer you. Do you want it?" That actually begins a process in her brain of relinking and connecting to you. It releases chemicals. It does everything good. Even just asking that actually can make them feel more loved, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the process.
And then I guess the third thing would be to when your kids are little, it's wonderful. Like you can practice being present with them. You can give them, your time and attention. And as your kids turn the corner into adolescence, they start to pull away, as we know. It's totally normal and natural, boys and girls. And I think that one of the things that we can do is kind of date our kids, take care of these relationships, just as we take care of our relationship with our partner, right? Like, we know that with our parenting partner, if we want a strong marriage, for instance, we want to like have date night, right? we want to put some deposits in that relationship bank account. And so we can do kind of the same thing with our kids, and that we can, as they turn the corner into adolescence, we can make sure we have some time with them. We can go into their world because they're not like little kids clamoring to get into our world anymore. So we can enter into their world and meet them where they are, or take them into ice cream or whatever it is, but just take the steps to maintain that connection. And then you can, maintain your, loving influence and all of those things when you have bigger kids who tend to have bigger problems.
You have to be very intentional about renewing your bond with your kids. My wife and I practice this. So we have 5 kids. And as you can imagine, going through intentional one-on-one time with each child takes a lot of time. We rotate through the month usually. Everybody
I
gets their
bet.
own intentional, specific time to make sure that
Oh,
nobody feels left out. And it's so key that those kids get, yes, big cluster family time, and yes, smaller group time, but one-on-one time with each parent, and even one-on-one time with each other. That's one
mhm.
wonderful thing that a lot of parents miss, is making sure your kids are
Mm.
spending intentional one-on-one time together that isn't in front of a screen. Being able to give them that time to invest in the relationships that they will need as they grow. That's gonna be an absolute key part of this thing. So, how much
I
do you,
love that you do
yeah,
that.
it's right. It's something certainly that my wife and I didn't get when we were growing up. Our parents were so busy with so many of the tasks they were doing that there just wasn't time. There wasn't appropriate time for that. Survival took precedence. But we are fortunate enough that survival is not on the razor's edge for us. So we're able to invest that time with our kids, and rather than investing it in watching football or going out and doing weird little activities that wouldn't ultimately fulfill us anyway, we invest it into our children so that they feel truly loved and truly cared for. And that's paying off in dividends because their empathy is so high for each other, their confidence is so high. I send my daughters and sons to jujitsu, and they're the best adjusted kids in the group. They're having a great time, and they're all connecting with each other and then out with the other people. They become almost the center of the group at that point because everyone wants to gravitate toward those people that have so much abundant love. When you invest in your children, I think it's the best investment a human being can make, to be honest with you.
I agree. I mean, that's an embodiment of when you love someone, the best thing you can offer is your presence. That's beautiful.
And take that even a step further. You can be physically present and emotionally, mentally try to, but you're grinding your teeth, stressed out because your nervous system is so dysregulated. And I think that arguably can be more damaging than you not being there for that moment. So I encourage a lot of parents, don't abandon, but step away. If you have an hour with your children And you have to take 15 minutes to calm down so the last 45 minutes can be deeply immersive. That's perfect. I cannot remember who said it, if it was Lincoln or if it was Washington, but they said if I had 1 hour to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 55 minutes sharpening the axe, right? It's that level of approach to your nervous system. Invest in your children, but prepare your nervous system for the times you're going to be with them. Don't walk in frazzled and burned and say, I must spend every possible second with you, even if it kills
Yes.
both of us, right?
Yes. Amen to that. Absolutely. I remember taking my daughter to the YMCA childcare. And she was a highly sensitive kid, just like me. And she was little. And I remember they came and got me after 10 minutes the first day. And then I was like, okay. They came and got me after 15 minutes the next day. They came and got me after 20 minutes the day after that. I was like, I'm not giving up. I need this time. I'm sorry, dear child, that you don't love the childcare so much. But you know what? My loving child, you are going to learn to tolerate YMCA childcare for an hour because I'm going to have this time to take care of myself so that I can have the capacity to be a good parent, be the parent you need me to be.
I think that's an important piece to link up for parents who are listening, is that self-care is childcare. That's one thing that a lot of my female clients who come in, they have anxiously attached challenges in themselves. And the concept of caring for themselves feels like selfishness. It feels ugly to them. It feels awful. It feels guilty. And I can't, in 5 minutes, help them overcome that. And their kids need them today. So I help them reroute, and maybe you've encountered this too. I help them reroute from taking care of myself is selfish to taking care of myself makes me a better mom or a better father. That relieves the vast majority of the guilt, because then they can begin saying, this is good for my children. Even if they have to sit there in the spa, this is good for my children.
Yes,
At least in that
yes.
moment, they can rest. If they're at the gym, if they're breathing in their car for 5 minutes before they walk in the front door after a hard day at work, this is for my children relieves the vast majority of guilt.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Do you have any other tips like that that relieve any kind of guilt for parents? Because that's a lot of what people are feeling these days.
Yeah. I guess I would just say, give yourself permission to be human, and remember that this is a big job. You're aiming for good enough. And, the more you can give yourself some ease, some relaxation, some pleasure, then the more your kid will experience those things as well, right? So you have to live what you want your kids to learn.
Modeling, back to modeling, right? Your kids can only really do what they see and what they know.
Exactly.
Do you think that, what's your take on the do as I say, not as I do? What's your take on that model? Does that work ever?
Well, I mean, I see that as the BS that it is. Clearly. I mean, I could see it as the BS that it is. I mean, yeah, there's not much else to say about that. I think that model can cause a lot of damage, and it can cause a lot of destruction of the relationship and a lot of resistance, so that when you have an adolescent, I believe that model is really the cause of the idea that we have this whole adolescent rebellion. Yes, kids need to differentiate and separate, but they have resentment from parenting techniques that didn't see them as whole human beings, and not the parents themselves. Those parenting techniques can really be destructive of a relationship. And many of us parents are on the other side of that. We experience that with our parents, how terrible and destructive it was, and how long it lasts into our adulthood. So no, we don't want to do that for our kids.
I would love to dig into something you just said, because it really sparked for me the difference between teenage differentiation and teenage rebellion. As you said, teenage rebellion, and if I'm understanding right, I think it matches what I feel as well. Teenage rebellion is not a natural experience that we should have to healthy, secure parenting. Differentiation, yes, but active rebellion and rejection of the family. Talk to me about that. Where's the different line there?
Yeah. Our kids will separate, they'll want time to themselves, but they should in a healthy dynamic and a healthy, securely attached dynamic, they still want to talk to you. They still want to listen to you. Yeah, they've said I hate you a couple of times in their life, but you're coming back together, right? Like it's never, and it's also never too late to heal a relationship at all. So even if you have teenagers and you had a lot of anxiety, a lot of difficulty and things when they're young, you can come together. You can, apologize for past things and heal that relationship. There really is when we use power over our kids in ways that are unhealthy, like when we, do as I say, not as I do, if you don't do the dishes, you're going to lose your screen time, things that are completely unrelated, punishments that are completely unrelated to whatever the behavior is. Though that's using our power over our kids. And the more we use power, the less influence we have. And when kids become teenagers, if we've run out of influence, we have also then run out of power because they can call a friend and say, pick me up, I'm out of here, right? They can do a lot of things on their own. So that's that teen rebellion is, I resent you so much for these unskillful means that you have learned from your parents and from society that I don't want this relationship with you anymore. Instead, if we use less power and we use more skillful means and we use connection and we develop a strong relationship, then when our kids are teenagers, and they need our influence a lot when they're teenagers because there are bigger problems. There are more adult problems that have more lasting impacts on their lives. They need our influence then. But so if we can parent from a place of like connected relationships, from listening, from prioritizing being present, from, solving problems cooperatively and maybe, using that power as sparingly as we can, then our kids can navigate these rocky teen years that have bigger problems with you on their team. And that's what they really, really need. They need you on their team at that time.
I like this. I think what I'll say is teenage rebellion is really born of the failure in the parent to build proper biochemical loyalty in their child through mentorship, through connection, through humanizing them. They've dehumanized their child and acted upon them with force, as you said. And ultimately the message they've sent is, you shouldn't be loyal to me because all I'm going to do is hurt you and take from you. You exist, child, to calm my nervous system. You exist to make me feel good and have an experience. Even if a parent isn't intentionally doing this, that's ultimately the role that parent has forced that child into, is you will caretake my nervous system at your expense. And no wonder the children turn against them. No wonder that's unfortunately become a staple in the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years of our Western culture is, I hate my parents because they've never understood me and they've never cared about me. The lack of care as a human being, I think, is the message that comes through. And I want to very carefully lay this out, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because the beginning of our conversation was, what is good enough? And then we wove into, well, it's certainly not perfection, right? That's the massive upper limit you'll never hit. But now we're talking about the absolute bottom limit that you can't go below. Turns out you don't have a deathly serious perfect line you must walk. You have a gigantic spectrum that you can go back and forth on during the course of a life with your child, and then give context, repair, grow. Ultimately, what you need to not do is be consistently damaging, hurtful, forceful, manipulative, and dismissive toward that child's humanity. They are a human being. They are not an object or a dog that you're raising. What are your thoughts on all this? Is this tracking?
Yes, it tracks enormously. I think that it's important for us to look at like the way we treat kids and the way we look at kids. Because sometimes I think it's so interesting, because some of the communication skills I teach in Raising Good Humans, they're pretty simple and they're kind of intuitive. These are skills we use with other adults quite naturally. reflecting back to them, using empathy. I statements are sometimes we have to learn that a little bit more, but, problem solving by understanding what both parties need. And in our culture, we tend to speak to kids in a way that's completely different. We bark orders and commands. We use threats. We use shame and blame. And we would never talk to any other adults like that. So sometimes when I want to offer people a shortcut, I say, like, would you say this? How would you say this to a respected auntie? Or how would you say this to your friend's kid, right? And then maybe try to speak to your kid that way. And I'm not blaming parents. It's not our fault. This is the culture we're in. We're like fish in a fishbowl, and this is the water that we're in, is that this is the language we use, right? Is you're okay, dismissive, it's okay, all those different things that we say. And so that comes out of us kind of very naturally sometimes in the way, some of us, the way we talk to kids. And those aren't words and ways of speaking that we chose, right? Those were things that were inculturated into us. But they can be incredibly harmful. The shaming, the blaming, the too much use of power and force and the authoritarianism, the harshness, and treating kids as like little robots. Like sometimes when I help parents make a request, like say from their kids, and I say, okay, so we want to make that request, and then we want to just wait. We want to wait a second. We want to wait a minute. We want to wait a couple minutes. Because when my husband makes a request of me, I don't jump up like a Labrador retriever and go do it right away. And some of us have this, I had it for sure, this idea that my kids should just do it right away because I asked them to do it. And we think of kids in a completely separate category than we think of anybody else. Would we expect our respected auntie to jump up and go do the thing right away because we said it, right? No, we wouldn't. So it's important to remember that our kids are not our property. They're not our dogs, right? And that's kind of a harsh way of saying it, but yeah, that's kind of some of the ways that we have in the past thought of kids, or the ways our actions have treated them. And no wonder they would rebel against that. And no wonder they would be unhappy and resentful and all those things. So yeah, we have to look at our language and take a hard look at it. How are we speaking to our kids? And is that what we want to model? Do we want to hear them? I remember watching my oldest daughter bark orders at her youngest daughter. And then I was like, oh no, that's what I sound like. And you're like, okay, this thing's got to change here.
I hear that loud and clear. That's one practice I've tried to institute in my home as well with my kids. If I'm going to ask them to do something, I'll walk into my son's room. He's 9 years old, and he's at his little desk. He's drawing a picture of whatever he's drawing, right? And I can look at him and I can say, hey, buddy, I'm going to need you to come out and pick up all your action figures from the living room because they're all over the place. And he says, okay, Dad. And I take one more step and I say, cool. When is a good time for you to be able to do that? I would like for you to do it sometime in the next hour. When can you get it done? And he says, oh, right after I finish this picture. I say, cool. I look at my watch or the clock and I say, about how long do you need? Oh, Dad, I'll be done in about 5 minutes. Okay, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate that. Can I come back and check if it's 10 minutes? Yeah, Dad, no problem. Thank you, buddy. And I walk away within that time limit. He usually finishes in 3 minutes, comes right out and he does it because I gave him permission to set the time. I asked him for what I need. He set what he needs. We've negotiated successfully. Now he comes out and he does it. And he does it. I don't even have to ask again, usually most of the time. And then he does it. And I say, hey, thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. High five. Great. All right. What are you doing the rest of the night? What would you like to do next? It's that, treating him as a human being with respect. All of a sudden, he acts like a human being. He doesn't act like someone who's angry and stressed and scared and terrified, like an animal in a cage. He acts like a person, and then he's happy to work with me. And that's how we build that relationship. Now, hopefully by the time he's 15, he still wants to talk to me. I hope that he does. But ultimately, this is the only pathway, I think, to get to a relationship where he still wants to be around me when I'm an adult. I try to tell people, Our kids chase us for at least the first 12 years, maybe the first 15 if you're lucky. 12 years, they're going to chase you. And then you're going to spend the next 60 years chasing them. And you're going to beg them to call you. And you're going to sit by your phone waiting for it to ring. And you're going to check looking for texts or missed calls. You better make it really easy for you to get a hold of your kid when they're 55 so they don't just click and not look at, and oh, dad's calling, and just look it down, put it down, and then maybe call you next week. Make it really easy to catch your kids because they want to be caught when they're 50, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember thinking about that as I listened to my daughter's, she was 4 years old, telling me all about My Little Ponies and just being like, oh God, this is so boring. I want to kill myself, but like, I'm going to listen because, and now we talk. We're very close now. And for the parents who may have been practicing unskillful means, and you're like, oh God, Adam, like I can imagine that would happen with my kid. I just want to say it probably, if you ask your kid, when we start to shift from some unskillful means and we start to add in some more skillful means, there's a time lag. It's because your kid may be going down the road of resistance to your unskillful requests at like, it's like a train going 90 miles an hour in one direction. And it needs time to slow down. It needs time to stop. And it needs time to turn around. So what Adam's describing is a kid who's been treated in a way for a long time and has come to expect certain things and all of that. And if you're making a change, it's totally okay that your kid is going to be resistant. It's going to feel awkward and it's going to feel unskillful for a while, but it's still worthwhile to make a change and to heal that relationship and to change things, even if you got that 90 mile an hour resistance train going right now.
And even going a step beyond that, what I try to encourage parents is if someone in your life was going to make a change, would you want them to just show up one day and suddenly be completely different and not explain to you why? And even if you like the change, like you're nervous, you're like, why are we changing? What's going on? Are you going to change back? Like, what should I do? Right? Would you like that? Or would you like them to come to you and say, hi, I'm going to be making a change. Here's something I'm going to be practicing differently. If you'd like to join me in that, awesome. Here's what I'm going to be doing different, and here's why I'm doing it. Here's what to expect. Which one would be successful if it was used with you? Right? Well, the second one, because I would know what to do and I would feel comfortable. Aha. You can get your children involved in the change you're making by explaining with relationship and age-appropriate context. This is what I'm going to be doing, and here's why. Maybe daddy didn't grow up knowing how to do this, so daddy is learning how. In the past, we have yelled a lot. Going forward, if I get to a place, I am going to go, and I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to calm down. And if you see me do that, we all just need to be quiet so I could breathe, and you can do it too. And we all need to come down because we shouldn't be yelling at each other because that's not what our family does anymore. And if you get them engaged in that, when they see you doing it, they can actually work with you instead of freaking out and working against you, even when you're trying to do something good. Your family will always work against you if you don't explain what you're doing and why, because they're scared of the change. Help them work with you. It gets so much easier. And that's part of treating your kids like human beings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had a moment like that with my daughter when she was like, why are you, don't patronize me or talk to me like that. And I was like, I'm really trying to not yell at you right now. And she was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's great advice. I should have said what you said.
Well, no, even that's beautiful though, right? Like, I am really trying not to yell at you right now. Oh, like that's a very honest emotion. And then you let your kids know, I'm having a feeling, but here's how much I love you. So here's what we're going to do instead, right? I am frustrated and angry, but I really love you and don't want to be angry. So here's what we should do to be productive and move through. They can say, oh, wow, this is serious. You're angry and you love me. I understand. I appreciate you not yelling. Let's move in that direction. And they can work with you on it. Express your emotions with your kids. Don't collapse into them or make the emotions their problem, but let them know you have provoked a response in me. right? That's important for us too. Our kids need to see when they push our buttons, we make it safe. I'll never forget growing up, I lived in a fairly rough city, and there was a story even for our city that was very shocking. There was a young man that was killed very brutally on his 21st birthday because he went to a bar and he'd been raised with every kind of privilege and no one had ever told him no. It came out later. And he went to a bar and picked a fight with someone who was much larger and angrier and much more drunk. And the guy took him out to the parking lot and just took his life in the parking lot in a very
Oh, wow.
surprisingly brutal way. The young kid had no idea that this could even happen to him because he'd been raised in the lap of luxury. No one had ever told him no. No one had ever said, you are making me angry. No one had ever shown him that. He was actually raised with very permissive parenting, upper class. And that it was shocking to our community. But the lesson really there is your kids need to know when they piss you off because they're going to go out into the world and be a jerk and they're going to hurt people. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to be obnoxious and annoying. They need to know that there are limits that people will tolerate. You give them a safe version of that. You don't scream at them. You don't attack. You don't demean. You don't destroy. But you say, look, what you're doing right now, very frustrating and very hurtful. I love you. Let's go into this direction so that we can both take care of each other, right? This is where we should be, and this is what our family will do. So you lead them in that direction. Use your emotions as data for them. Don't make them serve your emotions. Make your emotions serve them. I think that's what I mean to say.
Yeah. And also sometimes parents ask, like, when we talk about like having an iMessage and sharing what you're feeling with your kids and parents say that they don't want to put their feelings on their kids. They don't want to make their kids responsible for their feelings. And I understand that
Great
impulse, but I also think it's important for parents to understand that, like, when you're feeling really upset, like, your kid can see that.
Yes.
Right? It goes back to what we said at the very beginning. We feel each other's feelings. We're porous. So it's just being honest and helping to take the temperature down to acknowledge what's happening. Actually, I had this one moment when my younger daughter was like 9 years old and we had all watched a movie and she was 9, so she's supposed to put herself to bed and she's being all nudgy and she was driving me crazy. And I was like, oh, I'm going to read a book and ignore her and she's going to go to bed. And she didn't. And she stood there in the stairwell and she like nudged me and she laughed at me. And it was like, oh, here's a new trigger I didn't realize that I had. And it was like, suddenly, like, I was like, rah! Like just flames were like shooting out of my eyes. And I was ultimately ended up being proud of myself because I got up. I was so angry. I was like really like 0 to like 100 in like half a second. And I got up and I yelled, but I yelled skillfully. And I yelled, I am so angry right now. And I like went outside and I slammed my poor library book down onto the pavement and I walked up and down the street for 10 minutes to calm down. But I was so proud of myself that I didn't say anything about you or what you're doing, but I just yelled, I am so angry, and took responsibility for my feelings. And I think that, with practice, right? Like this is where we can get to being human, but being human in a way that isn't hurtful, for our kids, and in fact might be a little instructive.
I bet. What did your daughter do when you came in from having walked around outside? Was she a little apologetic?
I think she was like in bed. She had gotten ready for bed.
But it didn't harm that relationship because what you did was take responsibility for the feelings. Let her see that what she did crossed a line, but also you didn't punish her, right? You let her see there were reactions, but you didn't punish her and make her serve your emotions. You showed her a very important lesson that day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important for our kids to see the consequences and the effects of the things they say and do, and to realize that the parents aren't punching bags.
No, because they're gonna have a partner someday, and your partner. It's not adorable when someone treats their partner like a punching bag. It's not adorable when someone laughs at their partner and makes them angry and then treats them with zero empathy. We teach our children human empathy by showing them how they hurt us and giving them a safe place to even practice hurting somebody else and then making it okay. I would say that that's a parent's job, is to allow our children to hurt us sometimes and then give them a safe place to repair.
In fact, that's something that I was working on with 3 different clients yesterday, was this idea of when our kids are rude to us, when our kids give us an attitude, right? When we get to that, I don't know how old yours are, but when you get to that 12, 13, you get that attitude and that rudeness to us. And, one of the things we talked about was letting the kids know that the way they're talking is hurtful and ultimately makes us sad, right? Like we may be frustrated and annoyed kind of on the surface, but really underneath that, right? That emotion iceberg, right? If you will, we're sad, we're hurt. And for parents to say like, hey, when you talk to me like that, I feel sad, I feel hurt. And it makes me kind of not want to be around you right now, right? Like to be radically honest like that is to let them know, yep, this is how your behavior is affecting me. And, a kid is not going to, suddenly say like, oh, mother, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. But they are going to take that in. And, I bet they're going to come back a little kinder the next time.
That is how you teach empathy in children. Exactly. You have to foster empathy in them like this so that they understand what it means and they see that other people can hurt too. You teach them conscience, you teach them empathy, you teach them kindness. It's a messy job, but somebody's got to do it.
It's a tough job, man.
It's a very tough job. This, Hunter, was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for this here today. Can you please tell everybody out there who's dying for more guidance and more understanding on parenting, can you tell them where to find you and what you can do for them?
Sure. I'm the host of the Mindful Mama podcast. Been going for over 10 years. So if you're a podcast listener, which you are, check it out. And you can find Raising Good Humans everywhere books are sold. And I'm really excited about the Mindful Parenting Teacher Training Program. We're helping people teach these skills to other parents as teachers. And that's really wonderful. And that's all at mindfulmamamentor.com.
I love that. Everybody out there, make sure you check that out. Her Instagram is amazing for parents who are looking to give love to their kids. If you want to fall in that boundary between good enough, but not quite perfect, right? All that wide gap. Take a breath. You have that entire gap to play in, right? A whole range. If you want to fall in there, make sure you check out her Instagram. It's a phenomenal resource and her podcast. Everybody out there, I'm Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. You know me. Me and my team are on adamlanesmith.com. You want to work on your attachment? You want to work on your relationship? You want to work on your co-parenting? We are there to assist you. Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, fight in the comments if you have to about us, and tell us where you think we might have been wrong on this episode. We always love those conversations, and we do read them. And come back for the next episode of I Wish You Knew.